Hello, gorgeous soul friends. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Hannah. Welcome to my channel, and it's such an honor to be a part of your wondrous earth experience today. So a few weeks ago, I put out a post on my community page talking about Leave the World Behind and how I wanted to make a video on this movie because I do think it's very interesting that this movie came out when it did. There's a lot of very interesting subtleties within the film that I noticed and I think are really important for others to notice because this is how we overcome the predictive programming schemes of a lot of these Hollywood films, these Netflix films. I am barely putting this video out right now because I have 12 pages of notes and information that I've done within my research. So this is going to be a lot of information that I'm going to present to you today. And I'm hoping that you'll hear me out with an open mind and open heart because there really is nothing to fear during this time. A lot of things being displayed in the media right now are intended to fearmonger and to kind of create this sense of doom and gloom. But this video really is not intended for that, so I want to start off by disclaiming that I am in no way trying to fearmonger or make you feel afraid. There really is no reason for fear when you are a multi-dimensional spiritual being. There's a reason that you're learning about this before it happens. There's a reason you've been guided to this video. Maybe some of you have been seeing themes of this already within your reality. You've been feeling called to prepare and to maybe become more self-sustainable. The gift of foresight is God's protection manifested. So this isn't meant to be some kind of predictive programming scheme where I only give you a small portion of the whole while not really identifying the root of the message, which is what a lot of movies do. A lot of media tends to do this, especially like Leave the World Behind and other apocalypse films. None of them really address the core of the catastrophe. They're really only talking about byproducts of the root. The root being a solar micronova and a pole shift. Roughly every 10,000 years, there's a massive catastrophe that completely transforms the face of the earth and really all life upon it as well. And I find this dating to be quite interesting considering it's the same time frame that many young earth creationists believe that the universe was created. It's also the same time frame that Edgar Cayce gives when referencing the destruction of Atlantis, roughly around 10,000 years. So Edgar Cayce has also spoken on this shift. He's talked about it in some of his works, and I'll link everything, all of my sources and everything in the description box, so feel free to do your own research and come to your own understanding of what I'm speaking on in this video. In one of his channelings, he states, "There will be then a shifting of the poles, so that where there have been those of a frigid or the semi-tropical will become the more tropical, and moss and fern will grow." The Earth Mother has experienced great suffering, and its manifestation is becoming much more concentrated within the human experience. It's why there's been so much war, genocide, hate, poverty, destruction, and pollution of nature. It's all just a reflection of the energetic condition within the planetary ecosystem that we're a part of. So most of humanity is living completely separate from themselves, completely separate from source, completely separate from nature. And anytime I refer to source on this channel or God or anything of that sort, I am simply referring to the divine intelligence that flows and exists within all organic life. Because we are the higher intelligence fractaling itself and experiencing itself as a sentient being. So all of the celestial bodies are conscious life forms as well. And they're interconnected, they're constantly communicating with one another, which is why astrology exists. And it's also why the Romans used to worship personifications of the planets. So each planet is alive and it has its own consciousness, it has its own personality, and they really have relationships with one another. They communicate with one another regularly, they talk to each other. Sometimes they have conflict, which is why we have things like malefic aspects in astrology. Sometimes they have good relationships, which is why we have benefic aspects in astrology. All of this is really dependent on, like I was saying, this planetary ecosystem that we're a part of, where all of these planets are in communication with one another. And I'm not talking about any kind of ET references either, because that's not necessarily what this is either. Each planet is its own being, it's its own consciousness, it's its own sentient life form. So the sun is also a life form. It's a masculine force that provides the sustenance in order for the feminine earth to harbor life. Everything is just light refracted from our star, and that's why we exist in a hologram. We're basically just a hologram of the sun's light. And some believe that, the moon also plays a role into this as well, but that's a topic for its own video. We can get into all of that stuff later. So let's talk about solar activity, because the light from our sun does impact us. It impacts everything that goes on the planet. And solar activity has been increasing significantly. When solar activity spikes, it has a ripple effect that impacts the geomagnetism of our Earth and ultimately the biomagnetism of our bodies. So the state of our aura is directly connected to solar activity, and it's influenced by solar activity. And we've seen increased amount of evidence that directly corresponds to the increase in solar activity. Natural disasters, bird deaths, beached sea creatures, specifically animals that utilize magnetism to navigate the world around them, are having all of these weird things occur. That's why in Leave the World Behind, there were planes crashing and there was that cargo ship that crashed right into the shore. The warping of Earth's magnetic field will render digital navigation tools completely useless. There were also deer and flamingos that were guided to the house that the two families were staying in the movie. Their migration patterns were interfered with due to the shifting of Earth's magnetism. But this increased solar activity is having an effect on humans too. Regardless of your perceptions on the validity of astrology, the sun does have an effect on our psyche. Increased solar activity impacts the way we think, our clarity of thought, and I personally even believe it partially has influenced the mental health crisis. Solar storms also affect our health as well. Increased solar activity means increased solar storms, which means increased radiation, which means health decline. Specifically, this is the case for people with a weakened aura. And I do have a video talking about the aura on my channel. If you want to check it out, I'll link it down in the description box below, along with all my other resources that you can use at your disposal. Solar storms don't just affect the electricity within our technology, though. They also affect our auric field and consequently the electric impulses of our nervous system. People with a weak aura will get dumber, sicker, and mentally unstable. And rates of skin cancer will also increase in these people. I also have a theory that the coronavirus pandemic was directly connected to solar activity. It's not uncommon for people to experience flu-like symptoms during solar storms. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the term corona was used when naming the virus, considering corona is the outermost plasma layer of the sun's atmosphere, the layer that projects during coronal mass ejections. CMEs vary in intensity and some have more of an effect on the Earth than others. They project plasma and radiation from the sun's surface. Very similar to a rubber band popping, the pressure of the magnetic energy builds and bursts and is projected outward. Crazy thing is, in 2012, there was a Carrington event-sized solar superstorm that missed the Earth by 9 days. It would have been devastating if it had hit. And many say that the projected solar maximum cycle in 2025 could have a similar event that would knock out the electrical grid for weeks, months, or even years. On the flip side, there are also naysayers who believe that the solar event won't be as bad as others are speculating. But personally, I think that the grid frying is the least of our worries. The resulting pileup is most concerning. The halting of supply chain and limited access to resources will only exacerbate the descent into total anarchy. And as an anarchist myself, this is not the same type of self-government that has been taught by ascended masters in the past. This is the shadow aspect of anarchy. Total chaos and destruction. Interestingly enough, Pluto enters Aquarius at the end of the month for its 19-year cycle. Aquarius is the sign of anarchy. So it really wouldn't surprise me if we begin to see themes of this arise even within this year of 2024. Crime is already up tremendously, especially in the cities. We the people in our own individual ways are tired of a system that has completely failed all of us, and it's manifesting in the collective. Like seriously, have you guys been on social media lately? It seems as though people are so hair-triggered with rage. You almost can't even post anything on the internet anymore without someone being pissed off. The already fragile mental states of many will surely shatter as they're pushed into survival mode. And it's pretty fucking apparent that there is some sort of higher governing class shaking the ant jar using the media. Be it a cabal of evil elites or some AI system or some intelligence agency or something that we can't even conceive of. There is a very obvious agenda to separate everyone in every single way possible by race, sex, ideology, financial class. Something wants the general populace weakened because when the masses are weak, they're vulnerable to control, or even worse, to be taken out. And it seems the media is pushing this whole World War III narrative pretty heavily. There's also a Civil War narrative that's being pushed here in the States. The governing bodies of the world do know that the sun does nova. They just don't want everyone else knowing about it, because that means they get a head start on resource preservation. It means that the people remain governable. It means you keep paying taxes and they keep using your tax dollars to build their bunkers. But why are people of wealth and status building doomsday bunkers, even if the location of their bunkers don't exactly make sense? Lots of people are suggesting it's for nukes because that's what the media has been spoon-feeding us since the bombing of Nagasaki. The devastating effects of nuclear war mirror the devastating effects of a micronova. Radiation poisoning, sky blacking out, EMP, and total desolation of ground zero. It really wouldn't surprise me if this is the root behind all of the nuclear war propaganda. During this disaster cycle, there will be 2 solar kill shots. One in 2025 that is projected to take out the grid, and another one roughly 20 years later that will unlock the crust and allow it to float freely on the mantle. The centrifugal force will cause the poles to shift 90 degrees and spin at the equator. Don't think this is possible? Well, it's happened multiple times before. There is countless fossil evidence that showcases Greenland as once sitting at the equator, being lush forested and tropical. Right before the second solar kill shot, the sun will proceed to turn redder and redder before going completely dark. The projected solar debris will appear to us as something similar to an eclipse. This 3 days of darkness is prophesized in many doomsday texts. What I also find interesting is that the dark occultists at the top of the control pyramid are often referred to as the cult of the Black Sun, more commonly known as the Illuminati, because the psyoping never stops. I find it rather weird that billionaires such as Bill Gates and George Soros are obsessed with blocking out the sun. Like I said, the powers that be know that the sun does nova. They just don't want you knowing about it. The side of the Earth that is hit with the blast will be completely incinerated. It will be the equivalent of multiple nuclear bombs going off at once in that area of the globe. It will also significantly weaken the atmosphere of the Earth, and the resulting radiation will destroy many of the metal-based advancements, like throwing a spoon in a microwave, and send us back to the Stone Age. The Earth's crust shifting will cause an array of natural disasters, including earthquakes, volcanic activity, and multi-mile high tsunamis that swallow up whole continents. The entire world will have to be remapped. It was kind of interesting in Leave the World Behind, deafening high-frequency sounds are heard. It never really says what causes this, other than continuing to allude to some kind of cyber tech. Again, with the warmongering. I personally think that it's the sound of the Earth's crust shifting. Typically, seismic sounds are not audible because the tectonic plate movement occurs so gradually. But in this circumstance, with the plates free floating on the mantle, there's a possibility it would produce a sound that would not only be audible, but deafening. Another interesting thing I noticed in Leave the World Behind is that there's a segment they labeled as the flood. But the movie only includes a story about a man asking God to save him from a flood. If my theory is correct and the phenomena in the film is related to a pole shift, even if they never directly reference a flood as part of the doomsday phenomena in the film, I kind of think it may be a little bit of a hint that is dropped for those in the know. Because that's how these predictive programming films work. They're warnings to those with a functioning eye, and programming for those with a non-functional eye. The tale of Noah's Ark is one of roughly 600 flood tales across cultures, many of which are almost identical. The continent of Atlantis was also destroyed due to a flood that collapsed different bits of landmass into the ocean. The Great Flood is the result of a combination of things: the rapid unlocking and shifting of Earth's tectonic plates, as well as the rapid melting of the poles that would then be sitting at the equator. Anything sea level will become the new ocean floor, and people are going to have to migrate to places with high elevation. Another interesting detail I noticed with Leave the World Behind is that Michelle and Barack Obama's production company is called Higher Ground Productions, possibly alluding to the need to retreat to higher ground during a catastrophe such as this. When they go low, we go high. And I'm talking about the tides. Leave the World Behind also doesn't do well to explain Archie's mysterious illness that causes his teeth to rot right out of his mouth. Lots of people were chalking it up to the sound, but I think it's something else. Initially, I thought it was just radiation from the sun, but then I remembered. His symptoms don't start until after he is shown being bitten by a tick. The events of the movie also happen to be located in Long Island, New York, which is in very close proximity to the Plum Island Animal Disease Center. Many believe this facility is responsible for turning ticks into bioweapons. Are the Obamas confirming this idea with that inclusion? Once the crust shifts 90 degrees, just as there will be rapid melting at the equator, the new poles will rapidly freeze. We see this in the 2000s film The Day After Tomorrow, which they chalk up to the climate change phenomena, again with the psyoping. In the movie, they reference a famous excavation of a woolly mammoth who was found preserved in ice, frozen with food still in its mouth, which means the woolly mammoth was likely frozen while it was eating in a matter of minutes. Despite what the media may project, the apocalypse period is not a long period. Humanity is resilient, and there will be many of us who survive this, and we will quickly rebuild. From the channelings I've received on this subject, this is when we will see the true introduction of things like 15-minute cities and a civilization that is fully integrated and dependent upon AI. For my fellow gamers, think Cyberpunk 2077 or Bioshock. My guess is that there are already arcs or some sort of bases being built for the public, and there will likely be some kind of lottery system where people are chosen either at random or based on their professional skill set. Kind of like in the movie Greenland, and I think 2012 has this theme as well. I do want to heed a word of warning about these supposed safe havens, though. They will be a corral for the desperate and unprepared. The trade-off is submission to full technocratic totalitarianism. This is when I think we will really see the full manifestation of the chipping of humans. People will be so broken and traumatized from the calamity, and they will accept literally anything if it means they survive. Many won't understand what is happening in the world, and that lack of understanding will be used against them, as it usually is. So many of you are probably watching this video and thinking, I have no idea what I would do in a situation like this. And that's okay. I am making this video now because even though there is still time, the clock is ticking. Many of you, especially those of you who have been following my channel for a while, have an edge because you have the awareness of the power of your mind, the power of your thoughts, the power of your intentions. I've seen a lot of commentary from people online saying things like, oh, you can just manifest this away. And to that I say yes and no. I think people who believe that are completely misunderstanding what manifestation is. We are merely a fractal of a collective. So yes, we are the god of our subjective experience, but we are co-creators. The events of the earth are scripted into the collective timeline of humanity, but you get to decide how you personally experience those events. You can simply will yourself and your loved ones to be unaffected by them. You can will yourself to be prepared when the time comes. Earth is so much more intelligent and conscious than she is given credit for. She knows every single one of us. She knows the heart of every living being on the planet. Purification of the heart and soul is of the utmost necessity of this time. And I understand that there's a lot of rage bait and trigger content online that is designed to keep your mind in a prison. But you can combat this by being a light in the dark. Partake in random acts of kindness, speak up on things that you're passionate about. Make decisions that align with the satisfaction of your soul, and make the hard decision to disconnect from things that don't. Give that to yourself as best as you can right now, because many of the illusions cast up by the 3D paradigm are falling away. The veil truly is thinning. The events discussed in this video is simply the process of nature purging itself, because it's pretty undeniable that humanity has allowed itself to become a cancer to the planet. Your character, your ability to tune into your heart, and your connection to source will determine whether or not you are a white blood cell. Those who persevere through the dissolution will go forward and inherit the earth. And with the lack of state regulation, we will see many great alternative minds have their day, many of whom were once suppressed. And Rudolf Steiner speaks on this in his breakdown of the apocalypse. He says, "Man now uses his physical intellect for everything. He adopts a definite moral teaching and a religion. This governs him because the physical intellect holds sway. This evolution therefore consists in the fact that man learns more and more to use his higher bodies. Science and spirituality will merge, and this will lay the foundation for science to fully explore the mysteries in an unadulterated way." Rudolf Steiner also expresses this in the same work. He says, "Our science is materialistic. This will be different in the next subrace. We are striving for a different form of science, namely for pneumatology. Teachings concerning the spirit and the spiritual will be dominant in the new race." So coming out of this, we will be more spiritually attuned. Personally, I kind of think this evolution will be correlated to the increased radiation on the planet. And this is just a theory, but I kind of feel that those who survive the catastrophic events of the micronova will have heightened psychic ability, potentially even superhuman ability that we're not able to conceive of yet. I mean, think about it. There are so many references in superhero films that talk about radiation being the thing that gives the protagonist powers. I definitely think it's a possibility that dormant DNA could be activated as a result of radiation from a solar blast. But then again, this is just a theory. I mean, this is really going to be survival of the fittest, or more specifically, survival of the most in tune. I do believe that the solar blast is going to impact those who are already very weak spiritually in a negative manner. And on the flip side, it'll strengthen those who have already been doing the work to connect with their inner self. The events in this video, while seemingly frightening, are not intended to incite feelings of existential dread. There is really no reason to be afraid when you are the co-creator of your subjective experience. There is no reason to be afraid when you are a multidimensional spiritual being. However, I am speaking on this because it is pretty clear that this current structure of civilization is going through a massive upheaval. And I think it's incredibly important that we as conscious co-creators begin to cater our creation practice to becoming more self-sustained, not needing to be so dependent on the conveniences of society. And for some of you, this may seem impossible, but again, you are a conscious co-creator. I can't reinforce this enough. Set the intention to be more self-reliant, to be heart-centered, to be prepared, and keep that vision as we begin to see shit hit the fan. I know a lot of what's happening in the world right now and a lot of what's to come seems really scary, but know you are protected, know you are guided, know you will persevere, and that will be your reality. We have incarnated into this specific time period to witness and even contribute to this dissolution. We are being given the opportunity to reshape what society looks like. We have that power, and it all starts with you. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. I hope this provided a bit of relief to a lot of the doomsday propaganda that we see in the media right now and that we're going to continue to see as time passes on. Leave a like and subscribe and share this video with anyone who you feel may need it during this time. But that is it for today. Thank you so much for connecting with me and for allowing me to connect with you. I am so grateful and honored to be connected with each and every one of you. Leave a comment down below and let me know your thoughts on this phenomena and this subject. I love you guys so much, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.